All right, hello everybody. Right now, what we're going to be doing is talking about protein folding. So let me just kind of recap what we covered about before, and it was this. Our central dogma was going from DNA to RNA to protein to ultimately trait. Now, up to this point, we've talked about transcription, and we've talked about translation. But now we're going to start discovering this right here. How do we go from the protein that is made to ultimately the trait that is expressed here? And the key thing with all of this, is that the shape of the protein determines the function and ultimately the trait. Now, how the protein folds and how that all go about, that's going to be with the amino acids. So the other key thing here that I'm going to put as number 2 in this is that the sequence of amino acids determine the sequence of I should say the sequence of nucleotides, my bad, determines the sequence of amino acids. All right, now kind of just put that wherever in your notes here, and you can kind of pause it here. But the key thing is that we're looking at here is that a change in the DNA ultimately can have a downward effect in affecting the overall protein and then overall trait itself. You know, in the last lecture, you learned about mutations and the different types, point, substitution, those types of things, deletions. But now we're going to see what happens to the protein itself here. So kind of just, and again, this is just all review from last time here. We know that proteins, number 1, are made up of the monomers or building blocks, amino acids. Okay, so that's the first and foremost things. And we know there's 20 different amino acids, all right? But we also have to remember that from these 20 different amino acids, we can get those 20 amino acids from 64 different codons. And this is because, again, a lot of these amino acids are coded by multiple codons here, okay? And finally, we get our polymer, which is our polypeptide, which again, remember, these amino acids are linked together by that peptide bond. That is what's holding all of these particular amino acids together. And just like we talked about before, all right, joining these amino acids to form that polypeptide bond has to have water release in it. So this is going to be a dehydration reaction as a result of it. And we understand up to this point that it looks like kind of like beads of a pearl necklace, all of them going in a row. But again, proteins, the structure, the 3D shape it takes ultimately determines what its function is. So we're going to kind of look at different types of proteins, things like hemoglobin, which is the protein that attracts oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange within your body. Rubisco, which is involved with many different types of reactions. So let's take a look at them. So let's look at a basic overall amino acid structure. So you have your amino group, which is located right here. Okay, amine because it's an H2 grouping. Here we have the carboxyl group. Okay, this is because it's a COOH group. And the big one here is the variable group, otherwise known as the R group. And the R group is where we get a lot of how the protein is going to interact. All of the amino acids have the amine group. They all have the carboxyl group, but it's actually the side chain or the variable group that determines or gives it its, what we call its unique property, okay? And these properties range from being hydrophobic to hydrophilic, to positive versus negative, to neutral, to even forming different types of bonds, such as disulfide bonds, to so there's many different types of reactions that are out there for this, okay? So we're going to take a look at one here. So again, The function depends on the structure. And the key thing is with this is that the function depends on the structure. The structure is dependent on the sequence of amino acids. And you gotta, again, the amino acid sequence is determined by the nucleotides. The nucleotides are determined by the order of the ATGCs in DNA. So you can see where that kind of that string, that breadcrumb trail in determining the trait all the way down to DNA, okay? Amino groups are groups interactions with each other. And so this is interaction with the other amino acids, but also the environment that they're in as well, okay? So, the unique bonds between amino acids, again, this is bonds such as peptide bonds, van der Waals, electrostatic interactions, those types of things help determine how that protein's going to fold. And again, the structure leads to that particular function here, okay? So it's actually a little bit of a process for these proteins to get to their final structures, and this is where that organelle Golgi apparatus or Golgi body is involved with it, because it's a Golgi body that helps with the protein folding and interacting with its environment. So there's 4 stages by which proteins fold to their final structure: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. So we're going to go through each of these and just briefly explain what we're seeing in these particular cases here. So let's look at primary first here. So the primary structure, well, that's created right after translation. As soon as it comes out of the ribosome, you have that long strand of amino acids here. Now, once that is released from the ribosome, it gets transported to the Golgi apparatus to where it forms those particular types of bonds. But the primary structure starts to start folding, especially when you talk about amino acids that interact with like a water environment. Remember, this is in the cytosol is cytoplasm, and that is a water-based environment. So hydrophobic and hydrophilic amino acids are going to behave differently depending on, what kind of structure they have here, okay? Now, this primary structure, okay, it starts to fold. Then it goes into this, what's known as the secondary structure. And this is where, if you ever look up protein 3D models, you kind of see this little figure right here. And it looks like a bunch of like Christmas ribbon all over the place. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to know what that looks like? Well, what you're actually looking at here in this secondary structure is 2 types of formations. The one that kind of looks like this twirly spiral, okay, that is what we call an alpha helices. And the ones that's kind of flat like this, we call beta pleated sheets. Now, these 2 are kind of the biggest type of common shapes that we see in these proteins. And this is all based on the interactions between the amino acids and forming these hydrogen bonds. This is something to know right here, okay? So one of the big ones that determines, again, alpha and beta sheets are based on these hydrogen interactions. And so you can kind of see here, again, hydrogen bonds forming this positive and partial negative charges forming that particular bonds, and so it gives us our 2 different structures. Now, once it's folded into the secondary structure, it then goes into what's known as beta pleated sheets, the tertiary structure. And this is where it starts going into, before we go, again, bonds, but also you have things like electrostatic interaction. This is where you have, again, we're still in the secondary structure here, but this is where you have interactions between negative and positive ions, okay? So far the interactions we talked about are the hydrogen bonds, electrostatic, The third one is the hydrophobic hydrophilic interactions, all right? I'm just going to put water interactions. But essentially, it's interacting with that cytosol, that water type of environment. And then finally, we have metal ion coordinations. Also, we have what's known as disulfide bonds, which kind of goes under things like electrostatic interactions and metal ion coordination, okay? Now, whenever it goes into this tertiary type of structure, it is not just forming these alpha and beta pleated sheets, but now it's forming into its true particular structure. And this is based on these three types of interactions. The first one is obviously van der Waals. This is where you have polar interactions, negative, going away from negative. Again, likes, hate likes, okay? But different is better because positive and negative are coming together. The next one would be hydrogen bonds, things like, again, between those polar type of molecules. And then finally, you have these dull sulfide bridges, again, which is that SS type of bonds. So those are three types of bonds that bind on to one another, interacting with the environment. And finally, you have what's known as these quaternary structures. This is where you have many tertiary structures coming together to form the final protein. So in this particular case here, this is an example of hemoglobin. And what hemoglobin is a collection of 4 tertiary structures. First one, second one, third one, and fourth one, okay? They're very similar to one another, except for the fact that, you have some that have more alpha chains versus beta pleated sheets. They all have that iron, which again attracts with that carbon dioxide, or essentially it attracts to the oxygen atom. But the thing is that in this particular situation here, this hemoglobin is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of tertiary proteins. Each one of these came from a different gene. All right, and so we're starting to kind of dip our toe into the pool. Essentially, we're starting to see that a lot of the traits that we know about, things like eye color or hair color, is not determined by a single gene. There's many traits that are. However, a lot of the traits, as we have found out with technology and more gene mapping, that there's many different types of genes that control a single type of trait. This is why we have such a variety of different things, like different skin colors, different hair colors, shading, and all of that. And that's because you have multiple genes working together to make that one particular trait here, okay? So, kind of just wrap up what we just talked about here, okay? So we have 4 main things that we want to know in terms of primary structures, or protein structures. First one's the primary structure. That's going to be done by the peptide bonds, all right? And this, again, is determined by the DNA, the sequence of the nucleotides. That primary structure then goes into our secondary structures. This is where it's going to form those alpha and beta helices, and this is all based on workings of hydrogen bonds. And then also you have then the tertiary here. This is where you have the R groups interacting with one another, each other, and environment. And then you have multiple tertiary structures coming together to form the fourth one, which is the quaternary structure. And this, the quaternary structure, is what determines the trait. And so if the quaternary structure is not going to go into its proper shape, then it's not going to function properly. And the protein either loses some of its reactiveness or is not functional at all. Okay, it really depends on how I wouldn't say how changed the structure is compared to something that's not affected. All right, so that is protein structure. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.